Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, joined in the studio today by Craig Burley and Shaka, Hislop, and we're joined by a man who cries himself to sleep every night because he's not here with us. But fear not, he's really made an effort today. Thank you very much. Steve McManaman, who joins us, and as Macca is here. How are you, Macca? You well?
I'm very well. Lovely seeing you three. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, whatever. Let's talk about Liverpool, shall we? Obviously, there was some trepidation with regards to Arne Slot coming over and taking over from Jurgen Klopp. Just explain what it's been like over the last few weeks, Macca. You work with, of course, the youngsters at Liverpool. You've seen the vibe there. How has that changed over the last few weeks, given what Slot's been able to do so far?
Well, I mean, there certainly wasn't any trepidation on the side of me, to be very honest, Dan. But I think there's a distinct change between him and Jurgen Klopp just by the amount of outgoings there's been. You know, Jurgen Klopp relies a lot on the youngsters to a certain extent over the time, where Arne Slot has literally said to the under-21 and the loans manager that a lot of them can leave, a lot of them could go out on loan. So there's a lot of them that have being shipped out to get experience elsewhere, which is no bad thing, to be very honest. They need to play games, particularly at the ages of 19 and 20. And he's got off to a good start, let's be honest. But I think the team that finished the season last year, if you looked at their fixtures and said you've got Ipswich away, a promoted team, you know, Brentford at home, and of course a potentially difficult game in Manchester United, you'd expect them to start the league fairly well.
Oh, why are you playing it down so much? You don't like Slot?
I do like Slot, yes, but I'm just not getting carried away.
These are 3 easy fixtures. Don't worry, it's going to get worse soon.
I didn't say you had 3 easy fixtures. I didn't say that at all. But what I did say is the team that finished here, considering they were in 4 competitions come March, April, they finished the season in 3rd place. I fully expected them to win the first 3 games. That's all I'm saying. I hope he goes on and wins the next 35, Dan, of course I do, but you know that's unrealistic. He's got off to a great start. Everybody's filled to bits, but we also know that the Champions League hasn't started yet, so the 2 games in a week, every week, and travelling away hasn't affected them. But he's got off to the most perfect start as the new Liverpool manager, following in the big footsteps of Jurgen Klopp. Of course he has.
I mean, it's been bright, hasn't it? But, you know, Man United...
I know, but still, I thought Mac could be a bit more excited about what we've seen.
What we're selling here?
What we're selling is what has changed, I think. What's interesting, Andy Robertson has brought this up, and Mark Graham, but let's just see what they've had to say with regards to maybe just the slight tweaks we've seen under Slot. Andy Robertson said we look a bit more secure defensively. We had a lot more control in our game today. 3 games without a goal conceded. It was really good, and we want to keep that going. Meanwhile, Ryan Gravenberch, we have this as well, yeah. With Jurgen Klopp, we played more directly, but now we want to play out from the back, kill the opponent with passes. With Klopp, there was also gegenpressing. Now it is different. And I think that's the subtleties that, like Stevie and Robbo were talking about yesterday. Like, defensively, their things seem to be a little more solid, a little less rock and roll.
Well, it is less rock and roll thus far, but they did, you know, give up some... It's not like Man United didn't have a sniff.
No, of course.
But there has been changes, but I think it's... Look, it's positive that players are making statements, but it is too early to be saying, well, you know, that's what we did, and that we had some good success, not all the time, but this is what we're doing now, and they're almost saying, like, this is better. It's very, very early. I'm just don't want to rush to think this is going to be a Liverpool side that can... The same as last year. That I think everybody hoped that they would be hanging in there with City and Arsenal all the way, and they couldn't. And so I think that is still a huge doubt. And I think Shaq touched on it a couple of days ago. Once you get into Christmas and beyond, can your squad cope and can you sort of kick on? That's what the best teams do. Arsenal have failed to do it 2 years in a row, and City have came strong, but it's been really pleasing to watch Liverpool, but there are some much bigger tests ahead for this side, and the squad being one of them. You know, they haven't, obviously, they brought in some players, but haven't really beefed the squad up a lot. It's been very subtle. So there's going to be some big tests ahead, but there are subtle differences in the way they play. Of course there are. There's no manager going to come in and they do things exactly the same.
Macca, obviously, Robertson and Gravenberch, this is what they're going to say. They're not going to come out and criticise the new boss. Have we seen Have you seen much difference between this Liverpool and the one under Klopp?
Not at the start, but there has been differences, Dan. Of course, Arne Slot wants to play differently from Jurgen. Absolutely. Liverpool will continue to dominate games against most opposition, but there are subtle differences. He does want to pass the ball much. He doesn't want to press like Jurgen pressed. So there are and will be more differences, but after 3 games, it's hard to judge. The one thing you would say is they got off to a fantastic start. Some of the players a bit more experienced, like the likes of Gravenberch, like the likes of Slobozlai. That's why they haven't delved into the transfer market as quickly as other teams, because they feel that with a little bit more experience, these players should, because of their ages as well, get better, which they look as if they are going to. So the squad he feels at this moment in time is strong enough. I mean, Chiesa's come in, of course he has, but he'll be, I think, used a lot more in the Champions League because they'll have a lot more games, and I think that will help. And he'll be taking his time with to get rid of all those previous injuries he's got and get him up to fitness. So that's a good point. And the boys are right. Liverpool have got off to a great start. There's going to be harder games. There's going to be more games. They need to keep the majority of the squad fit, and then you can see them going on a run like they did last year, and hopefully be involved in the shake-up at the end of the season. I mean, I thought that, before Arne Slot was announced, I thought that Liverpool team, with a couple of changes, should be able to go again. Are Manchester City weaker losing Alvarez? That's a question we'll wait and see. Are Arsenal stronger with the Calafiori signing? Again, that's another signing. They've let Nketiah go. Are they going to be strong enough up top if they have a few injuries? So there'll be question marks over every single team. But at this moment in time, City are flying at the top of the league. Liverpool are up there, and Arsenal and Brighton have got off to a fairly decent start as well. And they're the teams that you'd expect to be there, to be very honest.
Salah obviously made no secret to the fact that Liverpool hadn't approached him with regards to a new contract in his post-match interview, Maka. His contract obviously ends at this season. What would you do?
Yes. Well, let's sign him up, Dan. But of course, we all know his age. We all know that he's probably I think he's the highest paid player by far at Liverpool at this moment in time. So Liverpool have a pay structure that they have to adhere to. Of course, every Liverpool fan in their right minds wants him to stay, the form he's in and the fitness levels he has, and the fact that his endurance levels are fantastic. He very, very rarely gets injured, and let's hope that continues. But at 32, 33, 34, he can't be continuing to get a huge pay rise every single time, because it just absolutely smashes the pay structure, and it smashes what the clubs in the Premier League are doing by trying to come into the PSR regulations now. So there has to be a number that Liverpool and Mo Salah can agree on, and I think then it'll be easy to do. Likewise with Virgil van Dijk, there has to be a number that both of them are happy at, because I think Liverpool wants him. I think he wants to stay, but it all comes down to wage demands or how they structure the wages, whether it's a pay-as-you-play, whether it's incentive-based, whether it's you get more money if you win trophies. And let's hope they come to an amicable agreement and he stays, because he's the most wonderful player. His longevity is fantastic, and he still looks as sprightly as ever, doesn't he?
Most definitely.
It just comes down to age, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if he's 28, it's not really a discussion unless he just doesn't agree on the wages if he was 28, but he's not. So a lot of this might come down to how much Mo Salah actually wants to stay. Do you know what I'm saying? Because he's unlikely to be getting some long deal taking him to 35. He might do, but as Maka said, it could be incentivised. And then if Liverpool make him what they feel is a firm and decent offer for someone of his age, and I suppose his ability and his how much of an asset he still is, then it comes down to the fact, does he want to go searching for another huge payday on a big longer contract somewhere else that can afford to give it to him? I mean, that won't be in the Premier League. That's unlikely to be in Spain or Italy either, again, because he's 32. So again, we're looking at Saudi Arabia and places like that where you're just going to a football and backwater. But it will come down a lot to whether A, they make him a good enough offer, and B, if he wants to stay and play ball. But at 32, you've got to understand clubs, and a lot of clubs have been burnt over the years, dishing out these big long contracts to guys in their 30s, and most clubs are now trying to get away from that. And that leaves them in a difficult situation, because as a player, as an individual, you're always looking to do what the best you can for yourself. So you're pushing it one way and the club are pushing it a different way. So it's going to be an interesting one. I hope it doesn't sort of cloud the season for him and these talks, sort of get in the way. And I'm sure they'll be having them and his agent will be having them. But I think it's a difficult scenario for Liverpool to be in, having such a superstar at this age on the big bucks that he's on.
It's a strange point to kind of try and make, Macca, but is there an argument to say that maybe he's slightly underrated given what he gives to Liverpool? And if he does leave, how do you fill those numbers in his absence?
Well, that's the big question. Filling the numbers is going to be incredibly difficult, Dan, of course. I don't think the club feel as if he's underrated because, as I said, he's the highest paid and he's the highest paid by a mile at the moment in time. So I don't think the club feel he's underrated. But everything that Craig says is completely true. He's got 10 months on his deal. He can sign a deal with a foreign club in January. So if he wants to stay and come to an agreement and come to a figure with Liverpool, I mean, the figure won't be paltry. It will not be paltry at all. It'll just be sensible. He'll still be incredibly well paid for a number of years. It's just how well paid he wants to be. Because as Craig rightly said, come December, come November, if he hasn't signed a contract, there'll be people contacting his agent saying, look, how much does he want? He can pre-sign a deal with us in January, February, whenever he wants. We'll make him, the richest man in X, Y, and Z. So if he wants to stay at Liverpool and he enjoys the club and he wants to play at the highest level, I think Liverpool and him will come to a figure that they can agree. It's just whether it's just how sensible they both are. But of course, Liverpool wants him. That goes without saying. Every Liverpool fan wants him as well. And you hope, like they do with Virgil van Dijk, who looks as if he can play for a number of years, and like you hope with Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's only a baby really when it comes to his footballing career, you hope the three deals will be done and will be done very sensibly, very privately. And I know Liverpool are talking to them already about these contracts now. The transfer window was out of the way.
I said the other day, and we were talking about it. We looked at those numbers on the graphic, quite incredible. His worst year, I think, there was 23 goals, 2019, 2020. 23 goals, you're not even going to... You think that's a great year.
Yeah.
Right? But let's not forget, we're talking about a wide player. There's no other wide player going to come in, don't care who it is, and get those numbers. Right? So you're now looking at a striker. If you want to replicate and go past those numbers, it has to be a front man. And they're unlikely to do that. That's going to cost a lot of money. Look at the other wide players at City and Arsenal and other teams. There's nobody getting those numbers. The strikers are. Haaland's getting them. But he's the focal point. He's through the middle. So it's not just the fact that you're losing... Well, you're not losing Mo Salah, but you possibly could because of the contract scenario. It's you're not bringing a player in his position. You're going to lose, I'm going to say, 20 goals. Because a normal wide player is maybe going to get you between 5 and 10.
Yeah.
So you're losing 20 goals plus. So you have to replace that. You have to replace that, and that's buying another player, not just somebody replacing them in the wide position.